It's something that annoys me when I see people talk about the economy and prices and stuff like that, because most people just don't understand the economy. The economy is a machine. It's an artificial thing, and you only see it when you go to the edge of the economy where it doesn't exist. So I was recently in Asia, and there you can have places which have enough food, houses. The weather is okay, of course, but they also have rain and cold times. People are relatively happy, everything is clean, but there's barely any money because people eat food, that's what they need, and drink water, and then they have to need a place to sleep, and then they, of course, farm because the food doesn't, well, sometimes it actually falls from the trees, but so they live there freely and they enjoy each other and they have their culture and that's the traditional tribal way of living and there was very little pushing of productivity or whatever and in the Amazon you can still have that. Those tribes are like 250 people usually in size, and they're being eradicated by the loggers and by the soy plantations, but that's the basic foundation of existing for people. And that used to be in Europe, of course, everywhere. You have small farms, and then you have a horse, and the horse pulls the cart or whatever. Or you have an oxen, or you have some other animal that helps you out, and you have stables. And I used to go to Austria on holiday skiing in the 70s and in a village when there was not really a lot of winter sport at all, and we were staying with a farm, and the guy had chickens and rabbits and cows. He was milking them, and that was life, and really not a lot of money going around. And they were earning a little bit more because they built a big house, which was not difficult because the resources were local, lots of wood and stone there in the mountains. So, and of course, a village community, everybody helps out, and then they built those houses, and they were very comfortable, but not a lot of money there, and a lot of comfort and free existence. And you can just go around and walk around in the meadows. That's normal life. That's the way it should be. And then, of course, we allowed banks to become important, and they made themselves important. They had a job. Basically, they were supposed to keep our money, and then they made up money. They made fractional banking. This was, of course, in relationship with the government, with whoever was in charge, and basically creating money out of nothing is a very old tradition in the world. But that created a force that was not interested in humans, but only interested in dealing with a lot of money. And that's what the economy is. The economy is a product, is a machine, and in the heart of it is a desire to see a lot of money flow around. Why? Because the heart of it is banks. Banks are at the heart of it, and they have big offices and whatever, and everything else is secondary to that desire. And the reason that they can manage to do that, and you can really see it if you just go to one city, from one city to another in third world countries, then you can see that, okay, there was a biologically based or bioeconomy, as I can call it, which was labor intensive, and there wasn't a lot of money going around, and there wasn't a lot of distraction, which was like television, mobile phones, internet, which had to do with stuff in other places that you could be interested in. People were interested in what they were doing themselves, and they had to be interested because they had to survive. But of course, but life was not like life is not really hard if the weather is okay. So if you don't wreck the climate, then Earth would be perfectly inhabitable all around by many people living in small hold farms or little villages together. Because if you look in a small village, then all that goes on there, there's only a few things going on there. And if there's enough food, there's not a lot of crime. That's also something, because everybody, there's enough food. You just give them some food, and then they don't have to steal. Well, and what is there to steal? There's nothing to steal. Like there's no lottery to win in a rural environment, let's say. But what you have, what do you need a village for at all? In Europe, we needed villages for security because people were stealing stuff, because there were people that didn't want to work and that want to subjugate other people. And of course, you have that everywhere. But relatively, but if you are like the whole art of existence in some third world countries is be not interesting, and that is still true. So, but if I go to Battambang in Cambodia, where I was, which was quite a basic town and quite traditional, and you can immediately see that the people are have a different attitude, and the cost is low, and the village was basically created by the French, I believe, to because it's mostly warehouses, which were now inhabited by all kinds of businesses, and the businesses are have two purposes. One is to distribute food and to have some essential services like maybe for tool making for the farms, and like that's modernization, but a lot of it is dealing with the city itself and creating economistic individuals. So put them in schools, have them have a regimented life without much actual productivity. Like if I grew up in, of course I had education in Holland. I didn't have to work until I was 24 or something like that. I never had to work a day in my life. That's ridiculous. I could, but nobody asked me. There was no requirement. So how much energy are we wasting by not having kids work whatever they can do as they grow up, not only for their own family, but in the economy? Well, you're not supposed to work in the economy because the parents are making money, and the money has to go to producers of products, and that's a lot of cash flow, and banks like that. But then if you're a kid, then you can also so from the bank's perspective, the ones that own the economy, that created it, they look at you and say, okay, well, this is a needy kid, of course. They're gonna nag his parents for everything that he needs in order to survive the peer pressure and have a social existence, which is the whole existence of a young person. The community that, like the group of young people he grows up in, is very, very important. So we're gonna extract as much money from these parents as we can by teaching the kid that he has to run around and change all the time. And like this and like that, and go here and go there, and wear this and wear that, and do this and do that, have this exercise and sport, and then whatever he finds interested or she finds interesting, or it, whatever, if you're like woke, once we discover it, we're gonna make it expensive. So, and that's the economy. It's constantly bankers getting in between everything, and they ruin it. And that's what cities are. I think that, and that's what the economy is. Today, cities are different. They're basically obstacles. They're deserts. You can't, like if you go out of your home, you try to find food in a modern city. Well, you're shit out of luck. There's no food. There's a lot of stone, pavement, concrete, and there's a lot of places where you can spend money. Of course, that's of course. But then we forget that, like in a third world country or a less developed country, between quotation marks, because development means doing it more the way banks like you to do it. It's not better, it's just more cash flow. In developing countries, people go out to the market and they get the food, and then the food is very cheap, so then they can produce food, and also if a place is not generating a lot of cash flow to begin with, then there's nobody there that thinks, okay, there might be a real estate potential here, and I have to invest in this restaurant and just buy it because everybody goes here, and then we get a restaurateur here and we drive up the prices, and because everybody is stupid enough to come here, like the Oasis concert that is now, I guess, made Oasis a hell of a lot of money, because the tickets, that the price they said was €150 or bucks or whatever, dollar. But Ticketmaster sold the tickets for 500. So that's a big markup. That's the market, because there's a shortage. There's a limited supply of Oasis concert, and it's an artificial shortage, because Oasis can just play like 20 other gigs, and then the price would come down. But that's more work for them, and I guess they didn't think about it or they didn't want to do it. They're quite grumpy. But that ruins it, because if you have a place where you have a restaurant, like in Phuket or in near Bangkok or in Bangkok, where there's a coastal zone in Thailand or and even in Da Nang and in Vietnam, if you have a place where you know people want to go and you drive up the prices, then the people that own the restaurants, they're not having fun anymore. There's no joy in that activity anymore, because they know that once the tourists go, like right now it's raining there, there's not much tourists, then the money goes, and then they still have the rent to pay, because the banks and the real estate owners, which is like almost one thing, like, well, let's not pretend like they're two different things. They're it's the prison and the prison wardens and the ones that exploit it, and that's a negative take, but let's make it stark, because there's no benefit coming from it from a city. Like so the places where the economic pressure, as I call it, is high, which means that if you have a restaurant, you have to make money, or you have to quit your restaurant. So you have to have every evening you have to have 20 people eating at least, or you have to be full. Then there's no fun in it, and you're running around and you're trying to get your food, and then in those places the food is still can be cheap. But if they are developing, which they are, because I talked to a guy that is selling pesticides in Vietnam and Asia and stuff like that, and there's just constant pressure in order to make more cash flow happen wherever you are. And it's not about quality of life, it's not about making people happy, it's just about these companies seeing more cash flow in order for the people in those companies to have economistic lives, like the lives that I have had in Holland for my whole life. I don't really know the rural life here, even though I come from more or less a village. But and I've seen a lot of nature and a lot of gardens. We had a big garden and stuff like that. But the economistic life, and I saw that, like, it's so obvious once you see it. It's like, okay, you live in a condo that you have to pay for 30 years, and then if you want to go to buy something, then you go downstairs to the garage and you get into your SUV, and you drive with your SUV through a town that is full of noise and traffic, and then you go to a super big shopping mall where you park your car, and there's basically no entrance in the shopping mall if you don't have a car. I had that in Phnom Penh, that I tried to enter a big shopping mall and couldn't find the exit. And then you go, and in the shopping mall everything has economistic prices. So if you go to the rural shop or the do-it-yourself shop or whatever, when there's somebody like an original human being trying to make backpacks, for instance, they're cheap. They don't cost very much. But if you go to the big mall, then it's Decathlon, and you pay exactly the same as in Holland. Prices are the same in Thailand or in Phnom Penh or in Vietnam. I mean, Phnom Penh is in Cambodia, but that's because that's economism, because they're producers and they produce, and they can produce 5% more, 10% more. Okay, so what do? They go to the bank, they say, okay, can you give me some money, because I want to stock a mall with my stuff. I want to have a shop there to sell my Decathlon shit. Lots of plastic, which is cash flow intensive, like it's good for the oil companies, and like a monoculture fashion, all very boring, blah blah blah. And then like, you think, okay, then it will be dirt cheap, then it will cost next to nothing. Nope, it's very expensive, because it's adjusted to how much you make if you are in the economy. And then so if somebody lives in the condo, then you give him a salary, then he gets 2,000 left over every month or something, $2,000, let's say. But then he cannot live a normal lifestyle. He cannot go to the every day to downstairs to get street food. No, that's not the way it's supposed to be. He has to go to big restaurants and drive an SUV, which is expensive, and he has to lease it, and it's $500 and stuff like that. And it's just cash flow. It's everybody being dressed up in stuff in order to generate cash flow. But then, let's say, if one day suddenly the power went out in the city, then everybody would be in deep trouble because there's nothing to eat, nothing grows. They don't know how to grow anything. They don't even know where to find it. And what happens also, and I saw that in a newspaper item, is like, I guess it was Bangkok, one of those cities. You have a subway train going from the countryside into Bangkok, and of course also rail trains. And so the farmers there that still live their homestead life peacefully, no noise. Well, a lot of scooters, but that's where it starts. But peaceful life, and okay, so they want to sell their food, which grows in abundance there, in the city. But of course, they have to go into city early in the morning, because you want to have the whole day to sell your food. But then there's the people that don't have SUVs that have to get from their condos to whatever office they're in the same subway. So they want to ban those people, those farmers, the poor people. They call the poor people. I don't think they're poor at all. From the subway. And that also means that if they do that, then eventually you get Japanese food prices, because the price of an apple in Tokyo, I'm not sure what it is, but it's like $10 or $20 or whatever. Because how do you get an apple into Tokyo? That actually costs energy, that costs fossil fuels, and all the while the banks and the fossil industry are looking on to this whole process, and they say, oh, that's great. So now you need to truck your apples into the city, and oh, you buy diesel, that's great. Oh, you need a truck, that's great. I mean, the more they can turn cities into obstacles and deserts, the more money they make. And the more desperate the people are in the little condos. And the more they have to, let's say, contend with virtuality, which is going to be huge, because I'm checking out Grok and I'm amazed, and it's still 2D, two-dimensional, and it's still very inconsistent. Like say you roll the dice basically, and sometimes something really surprising comes out, but that will be three-dimensional, fully controllable, consistent, real time. There will be chips doing visual illusions, and people will be locked in the cities, and they will be, let's say, completely. Basically, it's like when you have a lizard or something like that, and you rub the belly, or you put them on the back, and they don't move anymore. They get hypnotized, and they stay like that in a sort of catatonic state for a long time. That's exactly what humans will be in the economistic system. If you say, well, okay, we allow banks to make profit because we believe that it's good for society. Well, it's 100% empirically, scientifically provable that doing that, untethered capitalism, uncontrolled capitalism, is horrendous for everybody. We're now full of plastic, our planet is burning up, our forests are disappearing, our oceans are dying, everything is going away, basically, in a hurry, because the rate of heating in the last years has been surprising to many people. And before this, in the spring of this year, like in the early months, scientists were really in panic because they didn't understand what was happening. And now they're mildly optimistic, but that just means that whatever continuous heat wave climate is coming, because it's going to be worse than they're predicting, is coming like 20 years later. It's not going to be possible to wait it out, and the reason is economics and the banks that maximize their profits. That's the reason. I've been saying this for 10 years now, or something like that, almost 15 years. So if somebody talks about GDP and the national debt and whatever, it's not interesting. It's not important. What is important is that people start owning the land again. It is that people start as a like a maniac start doing stuff that cools Earth, which includes making a lot of stuff white, which includes having a huge project to cool the oceans, which includes having space-borne, like airborne, spaceborne, I'm not sure if this is correct English, reflective objects in orbit or in the Lagrangian point, I think that's what it's called, in space, in order to protect us against the sun, because it's going to burn us up. It is burning us up. But some of us are too distracted by let's say the shenanigans of the economy. And the economy is incentivized to distract you. So it's completely messed up. And so that's what I think people don't understand about the economy. They think it's something you have to fix. You don't have to fix it. You have to replace it. You have to start owning the means of existence. The only question you need in life to answer is, how do I survive? And if you say, well, I survive by making money, then you're a captive. You're basically restricted in your freedom so much that the only way you can survive is by making money. And that's what banks do. They constantly like cut off ways for you to escape the system, because they are incentivized to do that. It's not that they're in their offices and say, well, how can we make 50,000 people more happy? We give them flat screen TVs. No. They say if we give them flat screen TVs, they will be mesmerized sitting on the couch all night, and they will eat a lot, and they will buy stuff that they see on the television, on the screen, on the flat screen. And the flat screen manufacturer makes a lot of money, and we have to transport it, so that's a lot of diesel. That's a massive amount of of cash flow we generated there. That's what we want. Don't give a fuck about the people. This is actually what drove like the socialist, let's say, subsidized culture of the 80s, when there was like an energy glut. Anyway, this is 22 minutes of me ranting, but the economy means that you become dependent, and you should not be interested in it. You should be interested in replacing it and owning your own stuff. That's basically my message. And to do that, you might have to organize, and then you will find that once you organize in order to own stuff, you get a hell of a lot of resistance. Like unions have been taken over by bank lackeys. They're no longer the unions that the people fought for. But so you basically need a citizen union or a true socialist. It will be immediately branded socialist, and then you're supposed to hate it because socialism is communism, which it's not. But it's basically the simplest way I can put it is, banks want to make everything more expensive. You want to make everything cheaper. And those are diametrically opposed desires. And you should give yourself priority.